The Long Night by Steve Vance, illustrated by Peter Wartman. "You're not the only one," Bobby's father said as he drove their car very slowly and carefully through the empty streets. In spite of the fact that there were no other vehicles on the road, driving was still dangerous in this situation. His dad could hardly keep his eyes open. There are at least a dozen other people in this part of the state who haven't responded to the hibernation instinct. Bobby's mother hugged him with one arm while resting her head atop his own. For a moment, he thought that she had slipped off to sleep, but then she said in a warm, drowsy voice, "We thought that you would be affected like your brother and sister, but, well, you've always been your own little man, haven't you?" She gave him a sloppy kiss on the temple. Bobby glanced to the back seat of the car where Phil and Kathy, his younger brother and sister, dreamed happily. He knew that in houses and apartments all over the city, people were snuggled in their beds with the sheets drawn up to their chins, sinking deeper into the warm slumber that, according to the best scientific guesses, would last for at least half a year. This was going to be one long, long night, all right. "I hate putting you to all of this trouble," the boy muttered. What Bobby really hated was the thought of being abnormal, the only person awake while the rest of the world engaged in one gigantic sleepover. "We should be at home like everybody else." "Don't let it bother you," his mom sighed. "The hospital isn't far. We really should have made our plans when we realized that you weren't feeling the instinct the way the rest of us did." She paused for a long yawn. "Besides, it doesn't matter where we sleep, as long as we're together and safe." "I still feel like a freak." "Don't say that. Dr. Joseph believes your resistance is probably due to that shock you suffered when you were 4 and the lamp fell on the pool deck. You've never been a big sleeper since then. It's not your fault." His dad looked over toward him with half-closed eyes. "That's the great thing about the sleep. If it does everything the experts have predicted, it will heal all diseases and injuries, rejuvenate our cells, let the pollution in the atmosphere clear up, and basically just give the whole world a brand new start. I don't know what's causing it, but it's the best birthday present this old planet ever received." "Dad, watch out!" Bobby yelled as the car began to drift toward the curb. His father jerked the wheel to the left and guided the vehicle back to the center of the street. They weren't going fast enough to have caused any serious damage, but the near miss still set Bobby's heart pounding. His dad grinned in embarrassment. "I guess I'm a little more punchy than I thought." Bobby gazed straight ahead into the black canyon that was the city avenue. He had seen some dark nights before, of course, but with all of the lights out and not even a single radio station broadcasting, he had never seen any night as empty as this one. At least the hospital was still alive. Lights shone brightly on every floor and in the parking area as their car rolled to a stop by the emergency entrance. 2 muscular orderlies and a doctor in a white smock walked lazily out to meet them. "This must be our insomniac, Bobby Jackson," the doctor said. She was holding a cup of steaming coffee in one hand, but it didn't seem to be helping her much. Like the orderlies, she was already blinking and yawning with every other breath. "That's us," his dad answered while he opened the rear door and pulled a sleeping Kathy into his arms. She didn't awaken enough to grunt. "Sorry to keep you up this way, but the doctor shook her head. "We expected that there would be a few people who were more resistant to the instinct. And that would be you?" She smiled at Bobby. Somehow he managed to smile back. "Yes, ma'am. I'm just not sleepy." "No need to apologize. Studies of smaller mammals, such as rabbits and monkeys, proved that different individuals succumb to the sleep at different times, and I suppose you simply have a very hardy constitution." The doctor sighed and sipped a bit more of her coffee. "I do believe you're the last person in the entire city who's still awake without the use of chemical stimulants, however." "Freak," Bobby thought to himself. "Let's get everyone inside," she said, and one of the orderlies lifted his brother Phil from the rear seat of the car before leading them all into the hospital. The room that had been prepared for them was on the 8th floor. Bobby's mother almost passed out in the elevator on the way up, and the doctor had to offer her an arm as she wove her way down the hall and into the room. His dad and the orderly eased Kathy and Phil onto separate beds in one corner, while his mom sat down heavily on a larger one next to the wide picture window that framed the quiet city around them. With their work done, the 2 orderlies staggered out of the room to their own beds. "Hop up here," the doctor said to Bobby, patting the 4th bed in the room. Reluctantly, Bobby sat down and began removing his tennis shoes. "Good night, sweetheart," his mom whispered. She lightly kissed the fingers of her right hand and touched them to his cheek before sliding gratefully onto her side. His dad ruffled his hair and then joined her. Their energy seemed completely exhausted. Both were snoozing deeply within seconds. "Why don't you pull off your top shirt?" the doctor asked while preparing the injection. "You'll be more comfortable, and it'll be easier to administer the sedative." Bobby didn't enjoy shots, naturally, but that wasn't what was bothering him most as he slipped off his shirt. "This all seems kind of dangerous to me," he muttered. "I mean, sleeping for 6 months without eating or drinking anything, or going to the bathroom. It's not a normal sleep, the doctor told him. Scientists believe that it's caused by a peculiar solar emission, and what we've observed in smaller animals proves that the body slows to a much lower rate than even true hibernation. We won't need food or water for half a year or more, and the process seems to cure every known disease as it wipes away the damages caused by aging. She rubbed her red eyes. Don't worry, our studies show that giving you a strong sedative will allow the instinct to take over in a matter of hours. Couldn't I stay awake? He asked. Somebody should be alert in case there's an accident or something. She shushed him weakly and swabbed his left forearm with alcohol. If you don't join in the sleep with the rest of us, you'll miss out on all of the wonderful physical benefits. Relax now. You'll be snoring before you know it. Defeated, Bobby lay back onto the clean white sheets. I guess I'll see you in about 6 months, then. The doctor yawned. It's a date. Good night. The pricking of the needle hardly caused Bobby Jackson to blink. He didn't sleep 6 hours, much less 6 months. Bobby had never liked sleeping with the lights on, and the bright, fluorescent overhead bulbs of the hospital room worried their way through his eyelids to drag him awake. He coughed and grunted, shaking his head and wondering just where in the world he was, since this clearly wasn't his bedroom. When he was awake enough to glance around the room, he found his family still sleeping peacefully, and the doctor draped over the chair next to him, wearing a dreamy smile of her own. The syringe she had used to inject the sedative into his arm was lying on the floor, still more than half full. It was obvious that she had passed out before being able to administer more than a few drops, just enough to put him under for a short time. He looked at the clock on the wall. It was only a little past 1 in the morning. Great, he thought, what do I do now? It seemed peculiarly quiet in the room, with no sound, except the soft breathing of the others. Bobby almost felt as if he were the last person alive on Earth, the only remaining human being. A shudder ran through him. Was this what he faced for the next 6 months? Probably, but somewhere deep inside, he also welcomed the chance to sort of keep an eye on things while everybody else slept. It just didn't seem right to leave the whole world unattended, and though he realized how lonely it would be, he understood that someone had to do the job. Right now, he was hungry. After slipping on his shoes and shirt, he wandered out of the room to look for the snack bar. He had enough change for a candy bar and soda, and when that ran out, well, he doubted that the rest of the world would be too upset if the only conscious security guard borrowed what he needed to eat from the vast stock of canned foods that had been put aside as the sleep approached. There would be a few self-regulating power plants operating throughout the year, so he wouldn't have to worry about electricity for cooking or watching videos or keeping out the darkness as the 180 nights crept along. And of course, he could always use his scout training should he need to cook anything over an open fire. Bobby was munching on a chocolate bar when the first weird and tremendous noises broke through the stillness of the night with such power that he was almost knocked from his feet. It sounded like a gigantic piece of chalk screaming across a blackboard the size of Minnesota. The piercing screech reached right into his skull to shake his brain. He dropped the candy bar and raced for the nearest elevator. Since the sounds seemed to be coming from high overhead, he stabbed the button for the roof parking area. When Bobby stepped out onto the rooftop beneath the wide, star-sprinkled night sky, his eyes met a sight that he couldn't have imagined before that moment. From one horizon to the other, great glowing red fountains of radiance, each one emitted by a spacecraft, were raining down upon the sleeping and helpless world with a 4th of July brilliance. Just as suddenly, a voice began to speak within Bobby's mind. The words weren't English, but his brain understood them just the same.
The operation has been successful. We have reached our target and met with no resistance. Long live the mighty empire of the 7 systems.
The voice inside Bobby's head screamed and laughed. No, Bobby cried. The words tumbled from him full of rage and passion. This is our world. You have no right to be here. Go back to your own planet and leave us alone. As suddenly as the flipping of a switch, the noises stopped. The night went from mad chaos to so quiet that Bobby could hear the gentle breeze drifting past his ears. The exploding red fountains froze in place.
Resistance, this planet is not secured. The population has overcome the instinct. They possess incredible psychic power. Retreat immediately.
Yeah, you better run, Bobby continued to yell, hardly realizing that he was speaking. Go back to your own neighborhood with your tail between your legs before we give you something to run from. In the silence, the red lights blinked off. Soon, the night was cool, quiet, and empty again. Wow, Bobby whispered when his thoughts were clear enough to say anything again. I did it. I saved the world. Robert Arthur Jackson, defender of the earth and all the people who live on it. It sounded good, if anyone would believe him. And I'll be ready for the next 6 months if you decide to try again. He laughed at the stars. Then he trotted back to the elevator and the cafeteria several floors below. Even heroes had to eat.